question of where the Exodus took place is almost as puzzling as the question of when the Exodus took place. There are three major routes: northern, the southern, and, would you believe, the middle. The northern route I don't think we need to spend much time worrying about. For anyone trying to escape from Egypt, it would be an extremely improbable route to go all the way up to the coast and then along the narrow strip of land that is proposed. But in any case, the historical text that we have, the Bible, specifically says that God chose not to take the people by that northern route, that shortest route, because they would see battle before they were hardened, before they were skilled and trained and ready for the fight. The middle route does have the attraction that the Hebrew word for Red Sea, Yam Suf, in fact means Sea of Reeds. And the middle route runs through the Bitter Lakes, which are shallow and could conceivably be full of reeds. I don't know whether in fact they are or not. But there's one very major objection to this, and that is that this whole area of the Sinai Peninsula was fortified in order to prevent illegal immigration, in order to prevent people getting either in or out. The story of Sinuhe describes how he, a single man, in the best Colditz fashion, lay up in the sandhills watching the guards patrolling back and forth along the wall. And once he got their pattern memorized, he waited for dark, and then he slipped over the wall and escaped into the desert. But for a huge number of people, to say nothing of all their animals, that just wasn't a feasible option. Pharaoh could easily catch the Jews if they went anywhere near that barrier. The southern route takes you down the southern end of the Sinai Peninsula, which is the northern end of the Gulf of Suez. And that has a number of advantages to it. It was a more direct route from Memphis or wherever the capital was at that time. It leads down through a wadi that is a convenient and easy route. And it also explains why the Bible says that Pharaoh heard that the people were tangled in the mountains. Because both to north and south, you have ranges of mountains, a whole wild hill country, where a small group of men could easily pass. But again, it would be an insuperable barrier to a vast crowd of men, women, children, aged, infirm, healthy, animals. It just was not feasible to go that way. So this range of mountains runs right down to the sea behind me at Adabia Point. And I believe that it was near there that the children of Israel came and halted before they crossed the Red Sea. But there is one other route that has been suggested, and that is that the crossing took place right on the other side of the Sinai Peninsula. Let's go and have a look at that place and consider it. Nuweiba, on the other side of the Sinai Peninsula. Of course, I want to make it clear that we do not say that Adabia is the site of the crossing. Nobody can say exactly where the crossing was. All we say is that it may well have been. The indications are that it could be the site. But we can say that some places are not the site of the crossing. And the sea here at Nuweiba, on the other side of Sinai, is one of those places that we can say with certainty was not the site of the crossing. There are some people who say that we do know that this was the site of the crossing because they claim to have found Pharaoh's chariot wheels in the sea. Well, I think I can be very, very clear that Pharaoh's chariot wheels have not been found in the sea, nor have anyone else's chariot wheels for that matter. However, they are on firmer ground when they claim that there is a shallow portion in the sea here, shallower than to north and south. And what is more, I have the Admiralty maps to prove it. They're telling you nothing but the plain facts of the case. The truth. Well, part of the truth anyway. You see, according to the maps, a couple of miles to the north, the sea is about 920 meters deep. A couple of miles to the south, the sea is 1,500 meters deep. But right here it is much shallower. It is a mere 765 meters deep. Shall I repeat that? A mere 765 meters deep. Obviously, this is a new and unusual use of the word shallow, which I have not previously encountered. We have all, from time to time, parted the waters by blowing on our soup or our coffee. And we're all familiar with the phenomenon. And when we blow on our soup to cool it, we see that the liquid is parted by a couple of millimeters. Can you imagine the amount of wind that would be required to shift 765 meters of water? That's over 2,000 feet. You can't even dive that deep with a scuba outfit. How much wind would be required to punch your way through over 2,000 feet of water? And here's another thought. With that amount of wind, do you think the Jews, children of Israel, would have been able to stand up, let alone battle their way into the teeth of that wind? It's ridiculous. And as for Pharaoh and his army, that wind would have taken them all and blown them right away. Crook, flail, and chariots a lot. You wouldn't be looking for Pharaoh's chariot wheels here in the Red Sea. You'd be hunting for them out in the mid-Atlantic somewhere. It's just ridiculous. Well, enough of such nonsense. Let's go back to Adabia. Well, Nuweiba obviously is not the appropriate place. Let's consider some of the advantages of Adabia. In the first place, the children of Israel would find this an easy place to find, easy place to reach. In the second place, Pharaoh would find it an easy place to reach. After all, the Bible says that Pharaoh heard that the children of Israel were caught up in the mountains. Anything happening over near Nuweiba, by the time the news got back to Pharaoh and he marshaled his army and got down to Nuweiba, the children of Israel would be long gone. Whereas here at Adabia, all that the army needed to do was put a couple of sandwiches in their pocket, a little bit of water in their bottles, leap into their chariots and be off. Nuweiba, Pharaoh would have needed a whole vast supply chain in order to provide for his army as it marched those long, dreary, endless miles across the Sinai Peninsula. However, there is one piece of evidence that to my mind makes Adabia the ideal choice. Unlike Nuweiba, there is a shallow stretch of sea just here. Again, we turn to the Admiralty charts, and you can see that on the Admiralty chart there is indeed a shallow bit of ground running across from Adabia Point to the other side of the Red Sea, of the Gulf of Suez. The only break is here where a channel has been dredged for ships using the Suez Canal. The maximum depth here is just over 7 meters. What's that, 21, 22 feet. And it would be very easy for water to be blown away by the wind, or perhaps sand to be driven down and to fill up that area of ground and make it shallow enough for the children of Israel to cross over. The water driven apart by the violence of the wind, but not so violent that they couldn't walk against it. The water piled up on either side like a low wall, the children of Israel walking down this narrow bit of ground, but then when the wind ceased to blow, the water returning and covering the pursuing Egyptian army. To me, it all makes sense. To me, it all fits.